Welcome to Step 2025 Poster Pop-Up Studio. And joining us today as the first day, please welcome Ted Kemp. Ted Kemp is an international editorial leader, strategist, and a media visionary who builds and inspires diverse teams of content creators to develop and engage audiences. Former CNBC managing editor, a journalist who has worked as an editor, reporter, and a field journalist in the United States, Southeast Asia, Europe, India, and the Middle East. Welcome to Step 2025 Poster Pop-Up Studio, Ted. It is so great to have you here. Can't wait to ask you all the questions that are in my head. And so tell me, what are your expectations from Step this year? Is this your first year?
This is my first Step conference. This is really my first go-round for an annual kind of loop through all of the conferences in this part of the world. And so this is my first. This is an interesting one because it's, because of the fact that it's about startups in particular, I think.
So what is your sort of, way of doing business in UAE? So what do you do? What is your main domain? So do you do public speaking, writing, collaborating with TV? So what do you do at the UAE?
So I do collaborate across media, and I've worked across just about all media formats that there is. I mean, I'm primarily a geopolitical analyst, and this is an area of the world, because it draws so many people from so many places, so many different countries, so many different regions. This is an ideal place if you're looking for an audience that wants to understand geopolitical risk or macroeconomic risk or what have you in transnational, international kind of transactions, because there's so much of that going on here. And so I think that anytime you've got people who are dealing with, cross-border flows, labor flows, capital flows, idea flows, technology flows, debt flows, you want to be in a place where it's a hub for that. And that's a word that's overused, hub, but this is a real hub. And so this is the place to be for that.
And is this the topic of your sort of panel?
What I'm talking about at STEP, and actually I'm moderating a panel tomorrow, what we'll be discussing is the management of multinational team. Not multinational, because I'm talking about teams in more than one country, so international teams. Which touches on that, of course. There are a lot of challenges. Something that I'm already hearing, which is interesting, is people are talking about regulatory challenges being a big challenge. But that is geopolitics, because the regulations are the product of governments, right? And so it's that's what we'll be discussing. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be pretty lively.
What are you expecting from this panel? Just to see if it's going to come true eventually. So what do you set any expectations?
No, I'm going to go into it. I like to operate in an extemporaneous way, and just sort of I've spoken to both of the individuals I'm going to be having the panel with me, and said to them, listen, I don't want this to be some kind of scripted thing where we're like all caught up on hitting our marks and all that, because nobody's interested in that. I just hope it's a lively conversation. I hope it's a free-flowing conversation, and one where they feel free to. It's my job to make them, feel free to say what they will.
Definitely. And I wanted to actually dive a little bit deeper into, your professional journalism, background, and ask you all things media, frankly, because we talk a lot about media these days, and media is transforming, considering this whole, we used to call it digital transformation, now it's AI transformation. Yeah. How do you see AI transformation shaping up someone like news houses, big news organizations? How do you see that particular part impacting news organization on a global level, on a regional level?
Let me get it on the macro level, because I'm most comfortable starting there, and then we'll dive as you will. So let's start with large language models. What do they do? I think you have to look at what they do and what they do well, and then you realize what's left for you. Or you realize how you can take advantage of it, or try to take advantage of it. Now, and this, what needs to be said, is that there is no blueprint for this. So literally everybody is trying to figure this out as they go. But I think that a good place to start is like looking at, what territory will AI claim or or, 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 So I think that if you're a large news organization, you've got to get away from, let's call it, commodified content. There's already news organizations out there. It's primarily wire services, the Associated Press, Agence France Presse, and Reuters, that are operating in the space of sort of hitting everything, right? That's their role, is to hit everything.
Yeah.
So they're, especially with AI in place, which is basically going in and regurgitating what it already sees and repeating it. There's no room left for that, unless, well, no, I'm just going to leave it at that. There is no room left for that. So you've got to get away from the commoditized content, and you have to do something that's genuinely original. Now, what do you do that's original yet true?
Yeah.
Right? It's not fiction.
That's true. That's
so
true.
what you do that's original but not true is you have to do smart analysis, and you have to provide smart context, because news organizations are so bad at contextualizing information, and if they're bad at it, then AI, which is essentially just regurgitating what it says, maybe adding to it, maybe altering it, whatever, is going to be equally, it's going to be pretty bad at it as well. So you need to do something that, rather than being commoditized and easily, driven by repetition, it needs to be something that is genuinely original. And I don't use that to mean fictional or made up.
Absolutely.
I mean it. I say it that way. And then another route that one can go is if a news organization, is if you own something. So if you own a region, if you own a part of the United States, or you own everything that's coming out of Istanbul, or you own a place or a region or a niche, then I think that there's going to be a lot of room to play there too. So I think that you have to either stake out your ground in terms of what you do along the lines of analysis, the providing of context, the providing of real understanding.
Absolutely, yes.
Or a topic or region or whatever it might be that you can make yours. And it can't be too big.
So you need to understand the region really well and to understand what's relevant for this particular territory, and you need to be able to see the trend, basically analyzing what's happening in the context and bring in that genuinely relevant idea, I call it.
That's right. And that's going to require the development of skills that some journalists have, but frankly, most journalists do not. Because journalists are, irrespective of where they're from, tend to be so intently driven by the hook, the event, the thing that just happened, the airplane crashed, jump on it. They tend to do that, and some media worse than others, TV especially is that way, that they lose the ability, or they've not developed the ability to step back and say, okay, what matters? I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So here's an example. In my lifetime, one of the biggest events, if you step back and look at, this is an event, one of the biggest events that has ever occurred was during the Clinton administration, when the United States, U.S. Congress and the Clinton administration worked together to allow China essentially into the World Trade Organization.
Yeah.
Okay, now at that time that it happened, most people were not even aware of it. Most journalists were not even aware of it. And the reason is because as a hook, as a news story, as an angle, who cares? WTO, I don't even know what that stands for. People just were not that interested in it. Yet, it has proven to be of gargantuan import.
Yeah.
I mean, world-shaping import. And so what got missed there? What got missed was somebody taking the time to step back, or a group of people, more likely, stepping back and saying, okay, what are we talking about here? What is this? What does this mean? That's the skill set in an age of AI that has to be developed. It has to be developed by any news organization that wants to survive.
So what do you think, how do news organizations should tackle that in terms of encouraging their journalists to sort of step back, analyze, see the trend, probably look into niches that are not as hyped as you fairly mentioned it, right? So so most of the content creations, the creators, even if you look at the space of podcasting, they are looking for the hype, right?
Yeah, that's right. But the best podcasts, and you know this, are the ones that really go deep, and there's this sort of like intimate kind of like I'm letting you in on something, you know what I mean? And they just sort of meander, and there's a little bit of risk, right? Because you don't know if is the floor going to fall out from underneath this guy while he's talking, right? You know, it's like, you know, so I think that but I mean, I'm agreeing with you. Your point is a valid one. It's a different set of skills. It's actually a different way of approaching the world in terms of the way you think about it, you know?
Do you think it's curiosity more than anything else? Curiosity of the topic, or, I mean, how do you see the relevance? What do you think helped you over your career of being a great journalist to see those, you know, spaces and places where you have to be, I mean, versus the mainstream of the content?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. It is about curiosity because, you know, every answer should open more questions. You know, that's what astronomers always say, right? And it's true. So, you know, you should not be the type of person who wants to get to where, okay, I understand it now. Don't need to know anything more. It has to be somebody, you have to have people on a staff who do have that inherent curiosity. And you can't, by the way, you might be able to foster it. You can foster it, you can develop it, but you can't instill it.
No.
People either have it or they don't. It's like conscientiousness. Some
true.
people are conscientious and other people are not. I've always said, if you give me somebody who's curious and conscientious, I can make them into an amazing journalist. And I really do believe that. But those two things are born. You're not taught in school. Unfortunately, they're not even taught in universities. I mean, I really don't think that universities do teach curiosity so much anymore. But I think that, it's about finding a type and then allowing them to be that type, you know.
That's interesting. And that is such an interesting and very insightful perspective. I want to ask you something else, probably more related to your step itself. So I came across, when I was researching your profile, that you co-authored a book that is called Ragged Edge.
Yes, The Ragged Edge. That's correct.
Ragged Edge, yeah. So, and my first question to you was, how do you balance the journalism-based writing with the fiction, right? Mm-hmm. And your reply was, look, there's no fiction there,
right.
Which was totally, I'm like, okay, all right. So there's a true story. So can you tell me a little more about the book? And I know that there are some lessons and some facts that you would probably point out as the great lessons for somebody who's a founder in Dubai. If you talk more about that, yes.
There are analogs. So just to very briefly, so The Ragged Edge was named by Amazon Best History in 2021. And I co-authored it with a fellow named Michael Zakea, who was a retired U.S. Marine. He was tasked during the Iraq War with raising up an Iraqi rifle battalion and training it to fight insurgents. Long story short. So imagine trying to get off the ground an organization with vast number of stakeholders, both internal and external, all of whom have conflicting priorities, without a blueprint, because there is no one institutionally who can tell you how to do it.
Yep.
And without real institutional support. Not just because they don't know how to support you, but because they are disinclined to support you because nobody wants to take ownership of it. Well, that was precisely the type of challenges, those were the very challenges that Michael ran into as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps when he was trying to train this battalion of 800 guys, Iraqis, to be a rifle company rifle battalion. And so I think that there's a lot of very obvious parallels there. You know, I mean, to give you an example of how left in the cold they were, there is no U.S. government manual for how do you train a rifle battalion from another country. So they literally were going back and reading Lawrence of Arabia at a point when this was almost 100 years old text.
Yeah. Because
that was the only place they knew to go to. Well, how did he do it? Even never mind, it was 1917. It's the most recent information we have. It's the lessons that he learned. And by the way, I should mention that Michael had an MBA, and also was an entrepreneur himself and a former Wall Streeter. He learned that you've got to be extremely nimble, and also here's a trait that I think founders need to have that is under-discussed, they need to be patient. They need to, I mean, they can't be sitting on their haunches and doing nothing. You got to keep moving. But you've got to be ready to deal with maddening frustrations, maddening things that come up that could not have been predicted, that could not have been expected. Operating without a roadmap is just that. It's operating, in a fly by the seat. The way that Michael used to put it is he used to say we were building an airplane in mid-flight.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think relates to here completely.
To absolutely any business that is trying to grow in the UAE, that absolutely nimbleness, I think, is one of the skills. I'm not sure if it's a character trait or a sort of skill that definitely is in great need in the recent years, because the world is changing so fast, if you agree with me. And so you can't really, like last year, there were only a few chats about AI. This year, we're talking, okay, what's left for us?
Yeah.
In the space of media and content creation, what's left for content creators, what's left for professional journalists?
Yeah.
In the age where AI takes a huge speed and huge role, right?
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing those insights. So can you, just one of the last questions to sort of wrap up. So what are those proven strategies in terms of, you probably partially covered it already, but what are those proven strategies even when it comes to, let's say, geopolitical dynamics or some global global events that are happening, let's say, and UAE is a hub where a lot of things are coming across each other. So what are those strategies to stay relevant, to stay professional as well? And probably that is something that content creators can take as a tip for their specific niches in terms of how do you create news, how do you interpret the public events that are happening, what are those ethics around that?
I think that there's a couple routes you can go. You can be a true deep expert on something, and enough of an expert that you're continually generating new insights, right? That you know how to use AI tools to what should I search for? AI is only as smart as the query that's made of it, right? At least for now, that's the case. And so if you are somebody who has enough of an expertise and enough depth of knowledge that you can effectively use those very advanced tools in a way that will actually yield something new.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because like I said, AI will yield up things that are not new, except to the person looking at it.
That's an interesting
all
angle. Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Or you can be so broad, be so broadly gauged in your outlook on the world that you're going to be able to draw from various, data points, let's say, for lack of a better word, to piece together conclusions that are applicable to a particular place. Like in the case of geopolitics, if you were looking at geopolitical ramifications of AI being developed in the UAE, right? Exactly. You're going to need to be able to think about, okay, what is China's strategy? What is the U.S. strategy? What is where do they conflict? What other priorities of those two places are also coming into play and shaping their decisions, and how will that affect what you are able to do or not do or what have you. In fact, I think that there are a lot of people who are learning to ask these very questions right now here.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's you can go broad or you can go really deeply expert. I think that where you don't want to play is in that modular, commoditized sort of like, Lego block type of information that is just out there and anybody can see it just from a Google search.
I think it's the general theme of our today's conversations, just go away from commodity.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be, we've been saying for a long time, we've been saying that, what matters is the value proposition. What matters is being unique. What matters is the differentiator, right? Well, now more than ever. Because you not only are differentiating yourself from your competition, but you've also got to find a way to differentiate yourself in a way that the AI won't obviate you, And so that's I think, I don't have all the answers, but that to me is a pretty good starting point.
Ted, it was so great to open up, our day one with such an insightful conversation with you. I wish you a good luck with the panel moderation and other networking at STEP conference. And I officially invite you for a broader interview at our podcast studio, which got several locations in UAE nowadays.
Okay.
And I think you've got so much more to say than we could fit into sort of
that would
25
be fantastic.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
I'd love to discuss other books and everything else. So lovely having you here, and thank you so much for stepping by.
Thank you for having me.